What's up, everybody? Farmer Q here today, and today we're going to be dropping our spring seedlings that we already dropped inside our Bonnie cells over here into 1 gallon pots. So we got 29 1 gallon pots that we're going to be transplanting these seedlings into, and boy oh boy are they ready. I'm excited for this, and the seedlings are ready for this as well. We're going to be having them in the same container until about April 3rd or so, because we're going to transplant these plants outside after the last frost date. So we want to make sure that everything is right for our zone, which is 8A. So let's get it. So as y'all can see here, we got these pots on top of a tarp over here, so that when we fill these pots up, we don't have to worry about the soil getting on our carpet. And even if we do get a little bit of soil on our carpet, we can always just vacuum it up afterwards. So it's not a big concern for us. So in here we have our soil that we plan to use for our young plants. This is just a soil mix that I mixed up a while ago and got ready for it. It has a little bit of amendmentation to it, but it's kind of on the lighter side. We're just trying to make these plants survive for about a good month and a half inside these pots. So we're going to give them what they need. They started from seed and they're going to be fun. They're going to be beautiful. So let's get right on into it. Let's get right into our process of how we're going to do this. As you can see here, pretty simple. We just come over here, get our pot ready, hit the bottom a little bit, make sure it settles out really nice. And then if you want to put a little bit more, just add it right on top. Shake it up, even it out, and that pot's done. I don't like to fill these pots all the way up to the top because I want to leave space to where if I want to water them a little bit more if I want to water them a little bit more heavy, it can kind of pull up and it doesn't go over the lid of the pot. And then if I water it from the bottom, it's going to be just as good. But this also provides a good area if I want to put a little drip spike or have a little spray on the pot, and it works really well for that. So what I'm doing here is essentially making sure that we get the pots all filled to the right level. It's pretty important that you do this. It's not the end of the world if you don't get it exactly the level that you want to have it, but it's kind of important if you want to make sure that you have your sprays or if you want to have drippers or anything like that, because it gives you a little ring of forgiveness, I call it, to make sure that your water is not going to overspray the edges or the perimeter of your pots. Another thing that I want to emphasize here is the consistency of that soil that you see me using here. I went with a base soil of Happy Frog and Ocean Forest, and then I also added about 50 to 60% Sunshine Mix number 4, and this is pretty much my favorite indoor gardening composition as far as organics goes, because it allows me to start off with a little bit of oomph when it comes to the nutrient regime, and it also regimen, but it also allows me to make sure that I can have the aeration and have the water percolation that I need throughout the whole soilless media. Yes, I said soilless media. Even though it's soilless media, it still remains organic in this particular instance because of how I apply the nutrients that are homemade, the Leo Elixir, shout outs. And this just makes sure that I can really have the freedom to grow the way that I grow within the system of my garden. And I think it's really important that anyone, not just me, takes the time and takes the experience to make the setup be the best for them in their situation, or the best for you in your situation. This is highly important, and this will make sure that you have bounds of success going into what you're trying to achieve. So just keep this in mind. All right, y'all, so as you can see, we have all of our pots filled with our premium soil blend that we plan to go about using, and we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna transplant our seedlings into these pots. But before we do that, we're gonna go ahead and pre-moisten these pots a little bit so that when we transplant the seedlings, everything can settle into the exact place that we want it to settle into. And before we water this in, we're gonna add a mixture of that sauce as well as Photosynthesis Plus, and we're gonna be in business. So the reason why we want to add that sauce and Photosynthesis Plus is because that sauce was created by a microbial infusion of activity to actually break down the stuff that we added to it. And the Photosynthesis Plus is an awesome microbial consortium of actual cultivated microbes that are made to enhance root growth and enhance phosphorus uptake as well as other nutrients. So we're going to be going with the goods. So this is how they look before we actually pour them into our mixture. As you can see, that sauce, it looks like that sauce. And the Photosynthesis Plus just has this pretty little orangish purple color to it. And since we got our tart down, we're just gonna go ahead and get this stuff nice and pre-moistened.
One of the pivotal things to remember about transplanting your seedlings, or transplanting any plant for that matter, into any soil situation is to establish moisture before you actually bring that plant into the situation, because what the moisture establishment is going to help with is preventing those roots from having an absorbent amount of stress before they really need to. You know, plants can deal with stress in nature, and oftentimes it can help them actually get through different situations in nature as far as climbing through adversity. But when it comes to new plants trying to get a foothold into their life, you really want to make sure that those plants don't have anything inhibiting the success or the growth potential of that plant, especially at the beginning of its life. And as the plant matures and as the plant gets older, you'll notice that it can just pretty much push through most situations that it goes through. But until then, you need to have at the top of your mind to make that environment as desirable as possible for any plant that you put in that situation. So here what we're doing is just going through and getting some water down before we actually proceed with the rest of the process of transplanting the seedlings into those pots. Because what this is going to do for us is effectively make sure that we have the security that we need as we're coming through and watering the seedlings in when we actually transplant them into the pot. And this makes life so much easier when it comes to really establishing those plants and creating a foundation that you can be proud of as the gardener who's responsible for the lives of these plants. Because I know as well as you know, when we as gardeners aren't getting our jobs done, it brings us down and it makes us not feel as happy or as complete as we need to be as gardeners. So these are just some thoughts that I had as to why you should really pre-water and pre-establish your plants or your soil before you put your plants in the environment.
All right, y'all. So as you can see, we got our pots pre-moistened and ready to transplant our seedlings into. We're going to go ahead and transplant our seedlings into these pots. But before we do that, we want to make sure that we have all of our labels already written down before we transplant these, because we have them labeled right now, but they don't have their own individual labels. So what that means is we need to actually go ahead and make some more labels so we won't forget what plants that we're planting and have to figure it out during the season. All right, y'all. So one thing that I'm going to do for my plant labels, I'm going to abbreviate the plant labels because they're all going to have their own unique abbreviations, and I'll show y'all what that looks like. All right, y'all. So this is what that looks like. And this is Sugar Rush Cream Pepper. So you see the S, R, C, and the P. Another example here is the BT, which is the beefsteak tomato. We're going to go ahead and add our plant labels to the pots.
Look, y'all, do I really have to go too deep into why we need to use plant labels? I'm sure as gardeners, you've run into this mistake before. We put down all these plants and then we start misidentifying things as the season goes forward. This is a really effective way to make sure that that doesn't happen and that you can keep your clarity going and make sure that you don't have any misidentification problems going on as the season progresses, because Lord knows we do not want that happening as the season goes on.
All right, y'all, we got all of our plant labels in, minus the plant labels that are already inside of the plant cells. We're gonna go ahead and transplant these inside of the pots, and then we're gonna water them in the rest of the way. We're gonna call it quits. So let's get it.
So we're finally at the finish line. We're finally at the point where we're actually transplanting the seedlings into their pots. So at this point, we've gotten the soil watered in a little bit to where we can comfortably put our seedlings into their transitionary home, we'll call it. Because these 1 gallon pots, they're just placeholders until about April 3rd. Because here in Zone A, April 3rd is pretty much the last day for potential frost for us. I mean, it could happen later, but it hasn't happened past April 3rd and I don't know how long. And we're just getting these pots to a point where the plants can be extremely happy in their transitionary homes. We've gotten the soil nice and amended, and there's really no kinks or anything that's holding us back from having some successfully growing seedlings as we progress towards the April 3rd date. When we put these seedlings outside, they're going to have an extremely vigorous root system. We're not going to have to worry about them not being able to take the water that's being put down from either rain sources or even from ourselves that we put down with our drip system or our irrigation system that we have for the overhead sprays. And this is so exciting to me because this just is the most that I've done to ever get ready for the coming season as far as establishing plants and making sure that they're all of the right size that they need to be, and completely caring for them as we press forward through this time of transition, because you don't want plants that are not fundamentally or foundationally secure when you actually transplant them into your garden. And you also want plants that can rebound from any kind of stress and any kind of adversity that they may go through before they end up outside and after they end up outside, because you know what they say, stronger roots, bigger and better fruits. And I'd even say stronger fruits as well, because doing these things preemptively will really help you to get to a point where you're being proactive about things like blossom end rot and things of that nature. Because when your root system's really elaborately and complexly developed, you can fight through some of these deficiencies, because with the more surface area, i.e. space, that your roots cover, the better off they will be at nutrient exchange and creating the food for themselves. Yes, our plants actually produce their own food because they're autotrophic. So they harvest the sunlight, and then through having the soil in the right condition and having the roots where they need to be, you end up in a great situation. And one more thing to consider about these seedlings that we're putting into these 1 gallon pots is the size of the pot that we're actually transplanting into. We want big, vigorous plants when we transplant these plants outside. And by putting them in 1 gallon pots and really developing the root systems, how they really can potentially develop in this situation, it allows us to have a better chance at producing record numbers of fruit and producing plants that are just so strong that you literally have not seen anything like it. So that's what we're striving for from season to season, is to make sure that we can improve on the small things to make the overall situation better. And this is a huge part of that.
All right, y'all. So as you can see, we got all 29 of our seedlings transplanted. We had 30 seedlings, but we decided not to transplant one of the black vernisog tomatoes. And we're going to go ahead and water these the rest of the way in. And then we're going to take them to the space that they're going to go. And don't worry, I'm going to show y'all the space that they're going to go. So let's get it watered in, and then we're going to go ahead and transport them to the area that they're going to be living in. Let's get it.
So now that we've gotten our seedlings, yeah, some of these plants are bigger than seedlings seems like, but now that we've gotten our seedlings transplanted into their 1 gallon pots that have been pre-watered, we're now going to do the post-watering, because the post-watering is going to be like the zipper effect that's going to make the cells that the seedlings come from attach very well with the soil that we're transplanting the seedlings into. So this is going to basically be the glue of the process, binding the two soils together and making sure that the roots can exhibit as little stress as we potentially can have them. And we're in business.
All right, y'all, I wanted to give y'all a look-see of what we're looking at after the transplant. We got all the seedlings in the area, all 29 plants. And as you can see, if we zoom in here, we got labels for everything. That's a Murasaki purple pepper. Over here is another Murasaki purple. We got beefsteak, we got sunrise bumblebee tomatoes, we got sugar rush peach peppers, we got Turkish orange eggplants. Y'all. And then we got the strawberries on the side. And we still got room to grow. So what we'll do is get these seedlings ready, get them right, and then come April 3rd, they'll be outside in the night. See y'all next time.